Welcome to the podcast. We're going to keep this one real simple. Better kids, better world. Hi, everyone. Justin Lyons, founder of Blaze, back for a podcast. I am excited about my guest today, Alisha Bacchus.
Yeah.
I had to ask her again how to pronounce her name right beforehand because, I want to say the wrong thing, and I'm glad that she corrected me. We're sort of kicking off a revitalization of our podcast, Better Kids, Better World. And really the intent is to get a lot more educators and or child development professionals on the podcast to really talk about, what are the state of our children? What is the state of our children post-pandemic or sort of at the tail end of a pandemic, and what it said about education and child development, and what are some of the things that really need to be addressed to make change. There's a lot of money flowing around. There's a lot of, the Biden administration wants to put a lot of money into education, and including social emotional learning. And but as we know historically, that just because you put money into something doesn't mean change happens. And so I'm excited about Alisha joining us because I've gotten to know Alisha the last few weeks because she's helping me in a variety of different areas. And she's also a teacher. And she's also someone who wants to go back and get her master's and continue her education. And I think we can talk a little bit about the dilemma that she faces and the considerations she has to take into place when it comes to investing in her career, when it comes to education. So I will turn it over to you, Alisha. Of course, true to me, I didn't even read any of the notes or the bio as I just rolled in. So I totally don't, so I'll let you do your bio and we'll get started.
Okay. This is actually my first year. Well, 2020 was my first year of teaching. I'm certified in English as a second or other language in the state of Florida. I started as a reading intervention teacher, working with kindergarten through second grade. And then I moved to an after school program. So certified teacher for city of Hollandale here in Florida. And traditionally, I'm not like a teaching background. I didn't get my degree in teaching. I did a shortened program to get it. But my background is in international trade and marketing, which is like more logistics. And as Justin says, now I'm helping him. So I'm like an executive assistant. So I've just got my hands in many different places. And most recently, I was accepted to FSU school counseling program. And so that was my most recent dilemma of, do I accept? Do I not? Do I want to continue this journey? So that's where we are right now.
Well, we're going to dive into that. Just pause. I may edit this out, but I think your like headset, it rubs against your hair. So.
Okay. So then in that case, I will hold it so that it's like not rubbing against anything.
Okay. So I think that I don't know where to start in terms of to chatting with you, because as you talk about being certified in teaching English to students where it's a second language, I know from previous conversations, your cultural background is fascinating. Kind of your parents, I believe, are from two different countries, correct?
They're both from Guyana, actually, which is in South America.
But Guyana is sort of a mix of different cultures, right?
It is.
So I think it's a fair baseline to start with because, I mean, clearly migrant or immigrant or however you want to describe it, but people and young people coming to this country for a better opportunity. It's, as always, but I think even more so now, is top of the news.
Mm.
And the expectation was that, you know, people that were scared under Trump about
Mm-hmm.
immigrants are, you know, thought that, you know, Biden would be the savior. And I
Mm-hmm.
think they're a little bit shocked that his vice president is, you know, saying, "Hey, don't come here," you know,
Yep.
which sounded very kind of like Trump-ish, you know.
Yeah.
I have no political opinion on it. Just sounded like, God, if he would have said that this way, that's a pretty big deal. And
Mm-hmm.
so it doesn't change the fact that we have a lot of young people here that their parents have brought them here, and they're trying to learn the American way. They're trying to learn English, get an education. And you're on the front lines of that, you know, teaching some of these kids, but then you're also, you know, personally, your parents, if were they, I'd imagine, is it a correct statement to say that they immigrated to America?
Yep.
Okay.
They did.
So, you know, your first generation, I guess, is that, I guess that's what you would describe that as. So
Yep.
you're a first generation. So you're one generation removed from the experience these kids are going through. So I guess my question for you is how has that informed, you know, how you approach these children? Um, and has it given you a little bit more like empathy for what your parents might have gone through, you know, or maybe even gratitude for what, you know, some struggles that you didn't have to go through. So I just want to start there as the baseline, and then we can kind of get
Okay.
into the, you know, so let's start with your background, and then we can get into kind of like teaching the kids.
Okay. So that's true. My parents did come from Guyana in the late 80s, and they did go originally to New York. Thankfully, Guyana speaks English because Guyana was a British colony. So there wasn't actually a language barrier when they came. I do see that with a lot of my students, though, especially my really young kids, VPK, pre-K ages, where their parents won't necessarily have a really good grasp on English, and so they don't teach it to them. So then VPK, pre-K all of a sudden becomes, yes, we're introducing you all of these new concepts that you don't know, like shapes and letters, but we also have to do that in a language that you don't speak yet. So it's kind of like a two-found uh, like task that has to be accomplished. And I didn't even realize that before I went to like be a teacher assistant in a VPK setting. Like, oh, these teachers have to actually teach you what this shape is and then teach it to you in a language that you don't know yet.
Right,
And
right.
that's really, it's a hard concept to grasp for someone who natively speaks English because our language is so, it's such a like compilation of all of these different things from all of these different languages. So our rules tend to not be as standard as like Spanish. Spanish has very pretty consistently standard grammar rules. English does not have that. So that's like one of the biggest things I like first notice.
But not only, and where are these kids coming from?
I had kids coming from a lot of different South American countries, Latin America, and some from the
Like
Caribbean who would
Central?
speak, yeah,
Yeah.
Central South America, and then some who would speak Creole. So from Haiti, we had like a huge mixture of kids.
Which Creole is a very, I know I've been educated about Creole as it relates to Belize, which I
Mm-hmm.
think is a similar but you know, as I got educated on it, it's like this mix of, you know, it's like taking English and all the other sort of, I guess here's how it was described to me, that you have folks that are in like an English colony,
Mm-hmm.
but you have these different, like, call them tribes, or they're coming from different countries, and they're all either, whether it's slave, right, or
Mm-hmm.
it's indentured servants,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, they're all coming, and they have to find a way to communicate with one another. But as they're sort of speaking or attempting to speak English or broken English, they're also incorporating elements of their native language, and it
Mm-hmm.
eventually sort of like is this melting pot called Creole, which is it's the foundation is English, but it
Mm-hmm.
pulls from like these different native languages. Is that a correct? Like, did I get that right?
I think so.
Okay,
No
I
one's
thought
ever
you.
described Creole to me like that, but that sounds pretty accurate.
It was probably like a 2 a.m. Wikipedia lookup on my part, so I wouldn't take that with a whole lot of credibility, but it sounded good. Uh, you know, and so that's interesting because your parents came from, you said Guyana?
Guyana. Mhm.
Okay. For those that aren't familiar with Guyana, where is it? How do you spell it? What's its
Guyana,
history?
oh man, Guyana is in South America. It's kind of between Venezuela, Brazil, and Suriname. But it's also along the coast. So, like, I guess the northern part of South America.
Okay. Like
Um,
north, what? East? Northeast?
we could say northeast if we wanted to.
Ish. Okay.
You could spell it. It's Guyana. Let's
Well, that's
see.
Guyana.
Yep.
So yeah.
Former British colony. So when it was gaining its independence as its own country, both of my parents lived there. So they both went through that sort of revolution where went from colony to country and all of the conflict that surrounded that. So
Wow.
that too has shaped the way that they view themselves, and then the way that I guess I've had to grow up and view myself as like this in between. Like you said, I'm a first generation, so I'm kind of in between. Like, I don't really have a whole bunch of Guyanese culture, but I'm not quite fully American. So, and I think there are a lot of people in my place in this world, like in America, where you don't quite trend towards either one. You're kind of like hyphenated, like Guyanese American, you know?
Yeah, which let's drill into that a little bit
Mm.
because, you know, as I've created, you know, software and the content behind it, Blaze, the thing that's always surfaced to me is helping kids build an authentic, healthy identity of
Mm-hmm.
themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It starts with that, and I think, you know, that's the foundation that starts pre-K, K5,
Mm-hmm.
but it really reveals whether any sort of strong foundation was built in middle school,
Mm-hmm.
because my son who's 13 now, the transformation that happened when he was 12, I was like, oh man, this kid's self-conscious now.
Yeah.
He's growing and his voice is changing. I'm a little weirded out by him because like my little boy, like overnight, is growing into a man with his voice changing. He's self-conscious. I'm a little weirded out. All of a sudden, like, best of buds. It's like, what are we now? And so I think identity, I don't care where what your background is, but identity for children is very, very important. But then you add the layer that you're talking about, because I think my children also, they're kind of, well, half African American, half white. Um, they're America is going to say that you're black.
Mm-hmm.
My kids are going to say, well, I, I'm, I don't know, I'm both. I don't identify that way. But you
Mm-hmm.
can't really say that because, there's a certain segment of the population that's going to be very upset because, no, you're black, son. Don't deny it. I'm not denying it. I'm just not identifying like that. Okay.
Mm.
So I think, and then I'm sort of considered unqualified to have an
Mm.
opinion by certain people around that. That said, I get it, but if I raise them in a way that they're self-loving and they want to, treat others well, they want to work hard, everything
Mm-hmm.
should be fine. But I have maybe I have some privileges that have been given me to be able to lay that foundation for them. Whereas an immigrant child, their parents, life is stressful enough, but you come to this country without sort of any roots and you got to,
Mm-hmm.
invent yourself. There's not a lot of room for that, like, hey, let's just talk about life and get into your emotions and talk about identity. What's it like
Yeah.
for you, Alisha? What's it like? They're just like, hey, we escaped
Yeah.
Guyana, and we're here and we're
Mm-hmm.
making this life better for you. So quit it with your little emotions, and let's move on. Um, but I think identity, that's a really that hyphenated analogy. It's like, what are these kids? What is America to them?
Yeah.
Especially when you look at how divided it can be. So how did you work through that? Is it still kind of like one of those things that kind of nags at you a little bit? or did you kind of find your peace with it?
Oh, I'd say I'm definitely still working through it. And um, I like the thought that you said where it's kind of like how I guess the idea that like other people can have opinions on how you identify, and you're like, no, I don't think that's really how I identify. And like you said, it's most of this country right now, most of the people in my generation are like hyphenated people, or people who have had to navigate this space. And I would say really, it was really funny that you're like, are you still working through this? Do your parents still? Yeah, they still do all of that stuff. We've never had those deep conversations because, like you said, they came here with a purpose and a goal in mind, and that was like what they came here to achieve. So they weren't given the space to say, is this what I really want to do with my life? This is how
Right.
is this how I identify. So it's not like a conversation that I think we will ever probably have. Maybe in a couple of years, but
It's like that peak of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's like once you've all they
yeah,
were focused on were the core needs, and
right.
that was their purpose. That kept them occupied. That fulfilled them.
Mm-hmm.
But once those are met, and I
Mm,
think that's where a lot of American youth struggle because
mm-hmm.
they're not in the struggle. Like it's
Right.
not really a struggle here, and to that degree.
Mm-hmm.
So who am now you got this time. I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, I'm on whatever, I'm like, who am I on this, right? And then you have them creating these identities
Mm-hmm.
around that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want, so but as you've sort of gotten older and matured,
Mm.
did you kind of resent it and then you sort of grew to accept it and then,
Ooh. I would definitely say I think I started resenting it because culturally, Guyana is like not anything like America. Like I can remember going to school with things in my lunchbox and people like not having any idea what that is because it's not American. And me
yeah.
being like, well, I don't know what that is either. What is it? It's a Lunchable. Never heard of a Lunchable. I don't think I knew what a Lunchable was until I was in middle school. So like those
Well,
disparities.
if you come from these communities where it's like, no, we have fresh ingredients, we
Yeah.
prepare, like, well,
Yep.
Lunchable, that is just what is seriously, what is wrong with us? Baloney. I mean, come on.
I know, right? And you don't realize it until you get older and you're like, oh, that was good food that I was going to school with.
Yeah, but at the time you just want to fit in. You don't want to
Yeah.
be the oddball. You don't want to feel different. And I
Yeah.
think which is really interesting. I don't the national conversation talks a lot about race. So it's like, well, basically,
Mm.
if you're not black, you don't have any sort of, we don't really want to hear about your discomfort.
Mm.
Um, but then I have a problem with a lot of the people that, um, per, they behave and they sort of like talk in a way that they're at the best interest of black lives or black and brown
Mm.
children. But in my opinion, it's almost like the white savior,
Mm.
deal where they just read a book and got woke and now they want to scream it from the mountaintops, but they still don't have any really intimate friends of color. And they've never really loved a black or brown child or
Mm-hmm.
adult, but yet they are so smart and educated and so like morally, put together apparently that they can go around and they can tell people like, well, you don't have a right to have opinion, you do. And it just becomes very like, whoa. Whereas in reality,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of kids feel different. And if
Mm-hmm.
we can talk more about that commonality and that thread, I
Right.
think we have a chance to move forward because you felt different.
Mm-hmm.
Miles and Marley feel different.
Mm-hmm.
The really super introverted nerdy kid without any friends feels different. The
Mm-hmm.
girl who's overweight feels different. I mean, we have these commonalities. The Polish immigrant kid, yeah, white, but a Polish immigrant,
Different. Mm-hmm.
right, feels different. So I think that, you know, the problem I think with some of the dialogue, it's like we throw everybody else's differences out and we just focus on the one.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's productive. And I get that feedback from my kids because they're like right in the middle.
Yeah.
And when these conversations are happening, they're like, I mean, do I hate my white side, and
Mm-hmm.
like what,
Right.
where do I land? So I think that as when you're educating these kids,
Mm-hmm.
do you feel that empathy for them based on kind of, or do you kind of, even though are they all in the same boat? So it's not necessarily a huge issue yet? Are they all kind
Oh.
of, or are these classes sort of mixed with kids that are more native to America versus immigrant?
Ooh, I think that would heavily depend on where you're located in America. So just, in South Florida, my classes are as diverse as they come. I have kids who speak multiple languages in my classes. So
Yeah.
I think, and especially at the level I teach at in elementary, I don't think they're at the point yet where they're looking so much at differences. I think they're all still kind of just like, we're all kids and I like you because I like what you're playing with right now. And like,
Right.
we're cool. And that's, how it is. But um, there was something you said that I really resonated with. It was the classroom and the idea that I think it's kind of a new thing or a new educational philosophy to like talk about those differences. I don't think that was usually a place in the classroom to talk about like politics and talk about what's been happening in the news. And now, more recently, I'd say in the last like year or two, I've seen and I've taken a class on diversity and equality in the classroom. So I think it's now more coming into education where as a teacher, you have a responsibility to address these things if this is something that matters to your class and your kids.
Yeah. And to be clear, I am 100% in favor of um, discussing this. I think where I struggle is, are folks going about it the right way?
Mm.
Are you alienating too many kids to prove your point?
Mm-hmm.
When in reality, there could be a more thoughtful, because folks say inclusive, but is it
Mm-hmm.
really inclusive, or is it just in
Yeah.
making sure that a certain segment's included,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to inclusive? If it's a truly inclusive culture in a classroom,
Mm-hmm.
then you're sensitive to every individual child's unique
Yeah.
differences and potential discomforts,
Mm-hmm.
and you're trying to always be like sort of a master of sort of like threading their commonalities and empathies for one another
Yeah.
in a way that they all come out of it and say, okay, I'm the black boy and there's the white blonde girl. Wow, I never looked at her this way. I never thought like
Mm-hmm.
she could have a difficulties at home with her parents, or deep down have a lot of anxiety about stuff because she's the A student.
Mm-hmm.
So, like there's no worries there. And I think, because if you think about it, they all have to become adults someday,
Yeah.
and they all have to work with one another,
Yeah.
and they have to manage through society together. So why aren't we teaching like more of a holistic dynamic
Mm-hmm.
empathy amongst the kids? And I think a lot of teachers probably are. It's hard
Yeah.
with the curriculum.
Yeah.
So let's pivot over to your, unless you have something to say.
No, I think it's like you said, you kind of have to be a master of all trades to be a teacher. And sometimes certain things have to take precedent over others. So you know that you have to teach them this math lesson, you have to teach them this reading lesson. And so culture and those conversations that could really make a difference, I think don't always happen, at least not beyond the first couple weeks of school, because you simply cannot. There's just simply too much going on.
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody that's been in the workplace and it's like, oh, we have this great plan, or they're about to start a
Yeah.
new project with a new client or whatever. Now you have
Mm-hmm.
this great plan, and then, or me, I'm going to start a company. I've got this great plan,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm going to have a podcast. I have this great plan, and then
Mm-hmm.
you get into it, and life is inherently unpredictable,
Yeah.
and you're adapting left and right. So the question is, how do you retain the focus and commitment to this sort of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
um, when you have sort of like all these curriculum pressures on you,
Yeah.
and which takes us into kind of culturally for teachers,
Mm-hmm.
what they're up against, because I'd imagine most teachers get into the profession because they genuinely want to make a difference. They genuinely care about not just one type of kid, but all the kids. And they have some sort of self-belief that they can be a special contributor. And by the way, that was 25 minutes. So
Okay. Ooh.
I told you.
All right.
Okay. No, don't worry though. We'll keep rolling. Um, so I, you know, like I was mentioning the article that I couldn't find, but somebody's opinion on, you know, Biden and all this money he's got, saying, "Hey, we're going to address the teacher shortage." And then the person in the article was basically saying there is no shortage. It's yes, there's people leaving the profession, but you know, it's more of like we're underpaid, right? It's not a shortage like everyone's getting paid like a doctor and we can't find enough teachers.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's a cause to, you know, not as many talented young people choosing the profession, and also talented young people leaving the profession after a short stint.
Yeah.
So you're obviously very sensitive to the social, emotional, or you know, mental health, uh, all of the above of these kids, and that's why you're considering a program that would allow you to be a counselor for them. But what is and you've been accepted, and most would say, "Great, go for it," and you're like, so what's your hesitation?
Ooh, and the reason I originally applied for it is number one, because I did not see myself being a teacher forever. So there goes, you know, the talent pool staying. And then number two, I kind of looked around during the pandemic and was like, in 5 to 10 years, we're going to need a lot of counselors. Like I can see it now. It's just gonna, you know, it's just the problem's just going to get bigger and bigger. And I think my hesitancy was, it's like, it's almost like knowing you're going into war and like you have like this one thing and this weapon is all you've got and it somehow has to take you for the next 10, 15 years. So it was just the idea of being underprepared, probably not being paid all that much for the amount of workload that I'll have. And I was also reading an article recently, I think it was from Business Insider, and it was about the caseload that each counselor has, like per school, per district, and it's already way over. And we're not even, you know, we haven't even felt the effects of the pandemic truly yet. So it's a daunting task.
I think and I think this, it's that article, I think that we've both read, Nation's Skeletal School Mental Health Network will be severely tested. And they go on to talk about, well, Broward County, that's where you're at, you said?
Yep.
Because they're a reference.
Yeah.
But they had some statistics in here that talked about how just understaffed schools are from a mental health or school. Some don't even have like a school social worker or psychologist. Some have one for how many students, you know?
Right.
So how could they possibly make an impact? Is this the article that talked about the suicides in Las Vegas?
Have.
Yeah.
It might have. I know definitely talked about Parkland because that also happened in Broward County. So
yeah, Biden administration has urged state lawmakers to direct some of the federal relief funds earmarked for K-12 public schools, which is $195 billion, to mental health supports. Well, I wonder what some ends up being.
Right.
You know, I guess these are just the notes I pulled from it. But in November, when the student suicide numbers in Las Vegas became alarming, the district launched a pilot program in 12 schools to monitor student mental health. Still, 24 students had died by suicide in the district by May of 21. And only one of the new programs, which was just an online survey called Panorama, sounded vaguely familiar to the kid that they were interviewing for this article, who's a student in their school district. So it's another case of, kids are harming themselves. Let's get more programs. Let's go to more, read, watch more videos. Let's, but and the only thing he could recall that was actionable was an online survey, which
Right. Which is not a service. That's not something that's going to help him in any way.
no, and that is jarring. 24 in one district
Yeah.
had committed suicide. So clearly the pandemic sort of launched you into teaching, right? And then now you're observing, you've had this relationship with these kids to make an impact, and you're observing, clearly the present and future negative impact on the mental health of our children. So you're thinking like, oh, I should, let me get this master's program so I could really make a difference. And then you relate it to the analogy of, like, let's say Vietnam, which is like, this has been kind of like an unwinnable war for almost ever, it feels like, and it's constantly under resourced. So it's like you said, it's like you're being sent into battle, and you already know that we've never won a war. We've never won the war. We've won a few small battles, but we've never won the war. And all you know is you've got this like rifle, and you only have so much ammo every month. So you're like, yeah, I could, I mean, I hate to equate like helping kids to, killing people in a war, but I think most people could understand, like, you only have so much opportunity to make a difference at that point. And so at what point does your tank run on empty? Because the reason you're doing it is because you want to make an impact, unless you can somehow accept the fact that, well, if I can impact just one kid a year, or, one kid a month, it's worth it. But you also want to earn a living. So, you have all these things to balance. Anything else on that topic that, I mean, clearly you'd have to love it deeply.
Yeah. I think there are plenty of people who work in education right now who kind of have to adopt that mindset you said in your last bit, where it was like, well, if I just help this many kids, I will accept that as having done like what I've meant to do, because like you said, it's endless. There will always be kids that there's just not enough people to help. And I think that's probably the hardest thing about being in education, and knowing that like you would help everybody, but that's just at this current moment in time, that's not how the system is set up. Honestly, the system is not set up to help everybody, because if it did, it would. So
yeah. Or sometimes you set a system up to save everybody, but you can't come out of the gate with something like that. You have to come out. The foundation of something has to be scalable and adaptable, but it has to start with some small population. And you could see, okay, that worked. Let me continue to expand it. But I just think there's a lot of things probably working against it. You have school boards that change. You have leadership that changes, funding that changes its priorities. I mean, when you have sort of like, the what do they call it? The cheese, when you keep moving the cheese, so to speak. If you're a mouse, if you keep moving the cheese, it's like, how do you move forward, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think that I've enjoyed chatting with you.
Same.
I think as a close, I am the founder of Blaze. I should talk about it a little bit.
You should.
I think how we connect and why I'm so passionate about this stuff is, in a solution that started as from a relationship with my son and I, improving it and trying to guide him and guide us in a better direction, that then expanded to something that I said, can I turn this into a software that still retains, this. Uh-oh. That's my little son. He likes to hit the doorbell. So I lost my train of
it was about Miles. I really love that video, by the way. The video that you
Oh
have,
yeah.
it was really good.
Oh yeah. If you want to see the video, it's blaze.school/journey. But so anyway, what started there, I said, since I'd been in technology and software, I thought, hold on one second. Hey Alexis, I'm recording a podcast. Oh man, it's okay, bud. Oh, he's crying through the window at me.
Oh,
Oh, he's very
oh.
upset. He
Okay,
can't see
well,
daddy.
you
Um,
you can go.
I'll go in a sec. Oh, Mick. I love it how he's reached the age where he's really sad not to see, when he can't be with
Oh.
daddy. Not that I want him to be sad, but it makes me feel good that he loves me. Um, anyway, so yeah, so I think that, and then putting it in a high school of all places, because Miles was pretty young at the time, and seeing the kids take to it, it's become very, very clear that one solution to impacting more kids is put them in the driver's seat and make it as adaptable and flexible and let them control the content and the problem solving a little bit more, instead of it always being the teacher or the leader or the expert, or the panel of experts that think they know best and run it through all this validation, and then they throw it at the kids and they wonder why the needle's not being moved. I think at the foundation of Blaze is this belief that, starting at a very young age, the more you put kids in the driver's seat and you support that effort, and you have the humility to take the journey with them and say, hey, I got things to improve too. Something special happens. Will it work with every kid? No, but I think it gives them a chance. Like Marley, I was down and out this weekend about Miles, just being a teenage knucklehead, and not getting a few things, even though I feel like I give, and I'm like, which is just, a timeless parent challenge. And she comes outside, Daddy, you okay? And I said, yeah. She goes, I'm like, yeah, I'm just struggling with Miles. I'm like, how much more can I give him? Like, when's this? Is it going to click? What's he want to do? Da, da. And she said, well, maybe you just need someone to inspire him. Like, I'm like, well, I can't go like find a professional tennis player or something. She said, no, we'll find somebody online and you can watch them. And I was like, well, that's not a bad idea. And she said some other things that were like astoundingly like wise and mature. And then she's like, I think that we need like a saying, like one saying, because sometimes when people start talking about lessons and like they can keep talking for a long time, and then there's a lot of different messages in there and it's hard to keep track, and then you end up not doing anything because there's too many messages. I was like, oh, that sounds like daddy. When I go on my 15-minute tangents and I keep talking about this, that, and solutions, and then I run out of breath. She goes, yeah, there's not much we can do with that. I was like, she's if you have one saying, it's very simple and easy to remember. Like, oh, like what? And she goes, like lions always catch their prey. And I said, okay. How about, and then I said it wrong to Miles. I said, I was about to go on one of my speeches. I said, wait. One saying. I said, Miles, lions always eat their prey. And Marley's like, Daddy, it's catch their prey. I was like, yeah, but why do you catch your prey? You catch it to eat it,
Oh my God.
Yeah. So anyway, and then I had said to her, when she said, I said, Marley, you want to log into Blaze and write some trails? Oh, yeah. Because I said, think about this advice you're giving me. You could capture this in a trail. We can remember it. You can give it to me. You can give it to Miles. And then, now it's permanent, and maybe in the future, other kids and parents can take it. And so she sat at my desk like she was me. She said, get out of here, bonehead, to me. I'm focusing. And she wrote a couple of trails. One was called Never Give Up, and the other one was called Family Sane.
I love that. I love it for two reasons. Number one, kids are so intelligent. We just don't give them enough credit for it sometimes, even the little ones. My 3-4-year-olds used to say some things to me. I'm like, man, I really need to channel your energy because you just got it. And also, my best classrooms were the classrooms where I took a step back and I let them come up with the rules and then come up with the rewards and consequences. That's where I really found like they needed that ownership. So
yeah. I think it goes back to what's the priority of our education in America? Is it to get through these curriculums at any cost, or is it to slow down and give the kids a little bit more and not be as obsessed with the other stuff? I don't know. You know, I mean, sure, we could. I mean, we're not even doing that well academically anyways. We might as well, compared to the rest of the world. So we might as well try something different. And then we have all these mental health issues. We have school shootings. And then, God, if you've been in the workplace before, you got a lot of just screwed up adults trying to act like adults in a professional environment. So it's not like we've got anything, the gold standard. We might as well try something new, right?
Yeah.
So cool. All right. Well, that went longer than I told you. Yeah. Maybe some podcast hosts don't talk so much, so that, you know, I've got the problem. But well, it was a pleasure, and we'll see how this turns out. I'm sure it'll be great. And I don't think we'll have to edit it. We'll end it with this. I'll ask you, and then anyone out there listening, what's one thing you're grateful for, or some sort of a positive memory of anything that you have in the last 24 hours?
Ooh, in the last 24 hours. I'm really grateful for the friends that I've made, because I've made them online, and I know that's like a very my generation kind of thing, but they really do a lot for me, even though they're like not here. So even just chatting with them like virtually, it's a lot of fun, and it's really good for me.
Yeah.
My mental health.
Very good. I am grateful for the kids being back they're in camp, which you helped me with, full time. It's like, whoa, they're not here all day. I swear to God, yesterday it was like, I kept thinking it was a lot later than it was. I thought it was like 12 and it was 10. I was like, and then I thought it was like 1 and it was 11. I was like, what is happening? Is there some sort of time warp happening? And I'm like, oh, I haven't been interrupted 44 times yet. That's probably why, you know? I'm like, this is weird. No, I'm really happy for them. They're with other kids. They're active. Marley started her swim team before the camp, you know? So it's like, that feels more normal. I love driving them and picking them up and hearing about their day. You know, those things that when they're with you all day, it's like, you don't ask your kid after being interrupted 44 times. So how was your day? Right? Like, I know how their day was.
Good point.
Yeah. So anyone out there, just think of something good. It always makes us feel good to recollect that one thing recently, you know? And we will sign off. If you're interested in Blaze, you can go to blaze.school. That is actually a domain, .school. And you could read about it, sign up for a demo. If you want to be a podcast guest, I think I have the link there. Maybe not. But if I don't, you can still contact me through the site and request to be a guest. So thank you, Alisha.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure, and I'm sure we'll do it again.
Yes.
Hey, everyone. I want to thank you for listening. If you get a chance, go to blaze.school/journey and have a look at my story.